Welcome to our webinar series. I know quite a few of you have joined us in the past, and hopefully if this is your first time, this won't be your last time. And it's also nice, we know how many there are in our group here who work in the trauma-informed and the empathic listening, nonviolent communication world. So it's nice to see all the people who are working so hard in this regard. Oh, I just saw Ireland. Welcome. So we'll be getting started here in just a minute. Just for one thing that we have discovered recently in doing the webinars, if you choose the view setting, if you're able to mess with your view on your Zoom, if you do the setting that's called side-by-side speaker, I think is what it's called. If you can choose that setting, it gives you a nice kind of split screen, and you can even resize it a little bit. That lets you have the slides, but then also be able to see who's talking. So if you like that, go ahead and do that. So welcome again, everyone. I think we have just about everybody who we're probably expecting. We're glad to have everyone. So we'll be getting started here in just a minute. And just a little bit of housekeeping. We do usually ask everybody to try to keep yourself muted during the presentation. You can use the chat if you have any questions. So feel free to use that as much as you like, because we know how that is when you have a question. Sometimes you can't think until you get your question answered. So feel free to throw it in the chat. We have a couple of our staff members. So if I don't see it, they'll be able to make sure I see it. So, and yeah, it's been nice seeing where everyone's from, especially those of you who we haven't gotten to meet before. All right, all right, so I guess we can probably go ahead and get started. Michael, were you going to do kind of the next section, right? Or am I doing the next one? I can't remember. Oh, here, I'll just do this part. Okay, so we are the Relationship Foundation. For over 12 years, we've been introducing a unique life skill called nonviolent communication. And then also the science of the adverse childhood experiences study. And this study has led to what's now known as the trauma-informed / trauma-responsive school movement. So we have historically worked with schools, but then also we now work with organizations and even individuals to work on building stronger and safer communities. And in this, unprecedented time of uncertainty, we all definitely need it more than ever. So all of our work is done remotely right now, which has been nice because this is how we've been able to meet so many people through these webinars, because this is how everyone's doing their continuing education right now. So like for us specifically in the New York area, in June, we began presenting our work remotely. And to date, we've given workshops for over 450 school principals and their senior staff and teachers. But again, now we're able to offer our program everywhere thanks to Zoom and Eventbrite and all these great places we're able to connect with people. So on the next slide, you'll see a little bit about what we offer, and then of course we'll talk more about it at the end of the presentation. So we've been doing these free webinars since late September. Last Tuesday of every month, we talk about basics of nonviolent communication. And actually next Tuesday will be one of those on the 26th. So if you haven't come to one before, definitely come. And the second Tuesday of every month is usually when we talk about the adverse childhood experiences study and how to use that knowledge to create that greater awareness in any organization or even in personal life. Now, next month in February, we're actually going to be giving that ACEs presentation on the first Tuesday, just because we have 2 events the following week. So hopefully the first week in February, we'll be able to see you. And then as you can see on here, on the lower left, we do have 2 more in-depth workshops that we're holding in February and March. One group in February, one in March, for those who are really wanting to wanting to dive a little deeper into the subject. So those, we'll tell you more about that at the end, but those are things anyone can join in on those. We even have some discounted tickets we have available for a few more days, no promo code needed or anything. And finally, we do have our professional development workshops and curriculum for schools. We have a unique social emotional learning curriculum, especially for those of you who have kids. You probably have heard of social emotional learning. It's becoming pretty much required in every in every school. So that is something that we offer. Let's see, sorry, I lost my place here. Yeah, sorry. And our curriculum, it is based on the same nonviolent communication principles, along with this understanding of trauma in a way that helps teachers especially have greater understanding for their students who might be struggling. And then we also do similar workshops for non-school entities. So a lot of organizations maybe that are like group facilitators for different social services, they find it very valuable. And we offer all of these things on a sliding fee scale because we want to see everyone be able to get it if they need it. And we also actually have an instructor who can instruct in Spanish. So if that's something your organization needs, we do that too. And so we also, just last couple things, we do have a private Facebook group now. So anyone who's here tonight can ask to join that. We've got the name there on the screen. And then we're also on Patreon now. One of the benefits we're trying to give everyone on Patreon is that you don't have to register for every webinar individually. So if you become a patron and help us with our work, because we are a nonprofit, then you can join the webinars without having to register ever again. And we have levels for teachers, and that is only $3 a month. And then we have one for just anybody else for $5 and up a month. And again, we're on all the major social media, and we also have our book on our website that's currently free for download. We do have a survey link that we'll put in the in the chat, just in case anyone has to leave early. So if you want any more information on anything, you can use that to ask us. And then after the presentation, we'll have time for Q&A and like that. But like I said, if you have any urgent questions, feel free to put them in the chat. And again, you might think about trying that side-by-side speaker view on your Zoom setting. That might make it a little bit easier to see everything. And so other than that, I think I can turn it over to Michael now for the presentation.
Thanks, Cicely, and thanks everybody for coming from people in different time zones, and really appreciate it. Okay, well, tonight is the Neuroscience of Empathy, and we call it part 2, but it's really not necessary to have been at part 1 to have an amazing insight tonight. Now, regarding our ability to express empathy, we believe human beings are inherently caring, concerned, and empathic. Could it be that violence is an aberration? Someone trips and falls on the streets of New York. Tough town, New York. Yeah. What happens? People flock around that person to help them get up and make sure they're all right. Have you been in one of those flocks? Have you seen a school of fish swim in unison? I think you did if you came in early. How about a flock of birds flying in formation? There's no leader, so how do they stay together? When someone trips and falls, the flock of humans move to help out. Like birds and the fish, there's no leader. As a flock of humans connected by some unseen magnetic force, consider our potential for care, compassion, and healing. Empathic presence can help somebody get back on their feet. So what do you do when you want to get good at a sport? What do you do when you want to get good at a language? What do you do when you want to get good at a musical instrument? What do you do when you want to get good at a relationship? Who ever heard of practicing relationships? This work that we do is a relationship practice. And the more you repeat, the more you do it. And today we're going to repeat the empathy exercise, the more it gets into your veins. So to start, I'd like to share some feedback from a student. We go into schools quite a bit. A student who attended a remote workshop we gave in October. And her teacher had asked her, what was the most important part of the work this semester? What impacted you the most? And she said, learning about relationships and having the speaker from the foundation join the Zoom call and hearing a new perspective on this topic was mind-blowing. just to hear in perfect words what you are going through and an explanation behind it. It caused so much realization within myself, and my relationships changed. This was a teenager. So the work can really have an effect on young people, but it also does on people of any age. Now, we have a curriculum for schools. We also have a guidebook for organizations, and our workshops generate this kind of enthusiasm that you heard from this student, also for adults in any community. Since
special deal for becoming a subscriber.
Okay, let me ask everybody to turn their video off. Can we do that automatically from Cicely, from our end?
The audio was what I was doing. It's okay. It's all taken care of.
Okay. All right. Is mine on?
Yes, yours is.
So one New York City teacher that we worked with described this work that we're doing and what we are going to do tonight as CPR for the soul. And one of the objectives of this work is to reveal, in simple terms, how our brains operate and how understanding neuroscience can actually foster more empathy for others and ourselves. At the foundation, we are researching brain science, neuroscience, in order to present the most useful information to schools and organizations. And science doesn't have to be so difficult. Has anybody struggled in science class in school? If you put a yes in the chat, I'll know I wasn't alone, because I was a straight D student. Today, even for students like me, neuroscience has important implications for learning that could bring the light of day to those who struggle to focus in school and anywhere for that matter. So to give you an idea how rapid change can take place, I have a quick story. I used to work in the film business, and I was going to see a producer back in the 90s, and I was in a cab going up 44th Street, for those of you who know New York, from 3rd to 2nd Avenue. And as we got to the stoplight, a man came over to this cab driver's window with a cup, and he had ruddy cheeks, and I don't know how long he had been on the street, but the cab driver rolled down his window and back then clicked off a quarter, put it in the cup, and he said, 7 down, 3 to go. 7 down, 3 to go. I didn't understand this. Well, about a block later, he pulled up, and as I was paying, I said, you know, I've never seen a cab driver give money to a street person. And in a real thick New York accent, he goes, I don't interview them. I do 10 a day. That's what I do for New York, 10 a day. And I said, well, suppose he gets a drink. He goes, suppose he gets a cup of soup, and he gets a job, and he gets married, and he has 3 kids. He moved to Long Island. I'm not here to interview them. 10 a day. That's what I do for New York. Well, I had been giving people quarters when I lived on the Upper West Side, and I would see some people that maybe they had a new pair of sneakers, and you're not getting a quarter. Or I'd see somebody who had, you know, somehow looked like they were okay, but not for sure. But now I had this new mantra, 10 a day. Immediately, something took place in my brain, and I realized that I didn't have to stress out anymore about who deserved a quarter, who didn't. I prefer to help out people whenever I can, and on the streets of New York, you get it every day. So that was an immediate change in my neural pathways, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. So empathic listening is something that we're going to show you tonight for those of you who are new, and we're about to get started. We're going to present some background on the brain and the body to give you some insight into our behaviors and how they affect our relationships as well as our physiology. We're going to briefly mention brain architecture and the nervous system and its connection to empathy. But first, let's look at empathy and empathic listening. Here's the dictionary definition. The dictionary definition of empathy is to understand and share the feelings of another. How can you share someone's feelings if they don't tell you what they're feeling? So in the chat now, I think everybody has this list of feelings, and it may have been sent out earlier. So you'll never be at a loss for words to describe what you are feeling. The needs and feelings list was sent to everybody in a reminder email, but it's also on our website, and it's on the chat now. Let's look at what we call unmet feelings associated with unmet needs. These are feelings associated with disappointment, upset, etc. Okay, do you know what I'm feeling? Would someone like to guess? I'm in front of a large crowd of people, and even though I can't see anyone, I'm nervous. I'm self-conscious. Am I uncomfortable? Sort of, but I'm also feeling motivated, inspired, and grateful to be sharing information that has value. So we can have multiple feelings at the same time. You can only know how I'm feeling if I tell you. So now we're going to do an empathic listening exercise. First, we're going to look at what empathy isn't. And then what it isn't is called empathy blocking. Here are empathy blockers. What are they? Now you should have received a download email with the empathy exercise. It's going into the chat right now. Cicely and I are going to do an empathy blocking demonstration. To get the most out of this part, change your Zoom view to standard or side by side if you're able to. Cicely and I are going to show you what empathy blocking looks like, and viewer discretion is advised. So what you're about to see may be alarming, but don't worry. We'll also show you the opposite, empathic listening. Okay, these are the instructions, but let's, Cicely, are we ready to do the exercise?
Yeah.
Okay, here we are. Hi, Cicely, how's it going?
That's okay. Really crummy day at work. I have this coworker that doesn't pull their weight at all, and I'm just so tired of picking up their slack all the time.
Oh, yeah, I have someone I work with too who's, I wind up picking up after this person all the time. You know, and just the other day, this reminds me of a story. Last week, what was that? One-upping and storytelling. Well, Cicely, there's a really good book you can get on how to have a productive workplace, educating. Cicely, if you were to sit down and talk with this person and try to figure out how you can get along and work better, you might be a lot less aggravated. How was that, Cicely? Unrequested advice and fixing, analyzing. Cicely, every day it's the same story with you. Has anybody heard these sort of things? I know none of us today have ever done this, but have you heard this in conversation? Cicely, you know, it's been a long day, and why don't you just take it easy, because you need to calm down now. Consoling. Cicely, shouldn't you be glad you have a job? Discounting. Well, how is that, Cicely? So now, Cicely, let's meet again. Hi, Cicely, how's it going?
It's been a long day. I have this coworker, never does anything. I feel like all I do is pick up the slack where they aren't getting their job done. I'm just really getting sick of it.
Wow. I hear you.
Yeah.
So 3 simple words. I hear you. And then a moment of silence. And then you could say, sounds like it's really trying for you. It might be trying for her, but I'm not telling her you seem to be upset. I'm not telling her what she's feeling. I'm simply saying, I hear you. We all want to be received. So that's how we practice empathic listening. In our office, when we're not remote and people come in from let's say, the they come in to pick up and they've had to wait a long time to pick up their coffee or something, and they complain about it, and we say, I hear you. But we say it becomes like a joke because we say it all the time. But there are times like I remember being in an elevator on a rainy day, and some guy got into the elevator with me, and he's complaining and complaining, and I just kept saying, I hear you. I hear you. Wow, yikes. These are words you can say. And then, depending on who it is, if it's a friend, you could say, would you like some feedback? And then they might say, no, I just wanted to be heard. Thank you very much. So that's empathic listening, and empathy blocking is what you see on this slide. So now we're going to get into groups of 3 to 4 people, and we're going to be in groups for a short time, 5 or 6 minutes. And then each person, pick a 1, 2, 3, 4, take turns and say something that annoyed or disappointed you, not something tragic. It's a little, there's something we can say around that, and we have some responses for, but something like work, your roommates, issues, your spouse, and then each of the people in your group will go around and say, I hear you. Actually, before they do that, they're going to empathy block you. They're going to one-up you. They're going to educate, advise, fix, analyze, and everybody's going to go around the room. Then you're the person who said what their problem was. They're going to say it again, and everybody's going to go around and say, I hear you, or just wow. And you can feel in your chest when you say wow. There's like a vibration, and that's being present with someone. That is empathic listening. Well, we'd like to hear how that was. Put a few words in the chat. How you experience empathy blocking and empathic listening. Mm-hmm. Somebody wrote that your group was great at blocking. That's good to know.
It's true. It's true. It comes much more naturally, unfortunately. Yeah, blocking does not feel good. Yep.
Well, once I learned what blocked empathy was, I pretty much stopped it same day because I realized it was disconnecting, especially the one-upping. I thought I was being polite and making conversation and being sociable. You had a bad day? Let me tell you about my day. So we'd both be on the same page. But now I realize that person doesn't get a chance to just take a breath and be received. That's the thing that we say over and over. Everyone wants to be received. And that's what empathic listening is, simply receiving another person. Okay.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes, ask a long question.
So, if I were to say in my group, we were asking each other, if I were to say, I'm so sorry you're going through that, would that be an empathetic listening tool?
Well, it's not like I'm so sorry for if you're comfortable with that, that's fine. But when I say I'm sorry, I'm talking about myself. I'm sorry. And I don't know how sorry that person is or what sorry means to them, but I prefer to say I hear you. And when someone mentions something that's tragic, one way to practice empathy is say, I don't know what to say, but I'm glad you told me. That I don't know what to say, instead of like, I'm so sorry. Now, in today's world, we're hearing about a lot of tragedies like never before. And I am sorry to hear about it, but what is sorry? It's more for me. It's more how I'm feeling. But we won't say, don't say I'm sorry anymore. You can't say that. That's empathy blocking. See what feels appropriate. See what feels comfortable for you. I stopped saying I'm sorry. Somebody's had a rough day. somebody had a fight with one of their relatives, and I say, wow, I hear you.
Yeah,
You could say,
I basically said the same thing that, what I've learned, if somebody just says, I just lost my sister. And if I say, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry for you, it's just not appropriate anymore. It's not the appropriate
yeah,
response.
yeah, it's a fine line. What is I am sorry? Well, what about you? Are you sorry? Maybe you're not sorry. Maybe you're devastated. Maybe you're sad. What we can talk about it after when in Q&A. It's there's kind of a fine line. What is to say I'm sorry? Well, you're sorry for them. Well, maybe they don't want you to be sorry for them. Maybe they want you to go out and celebrate life as an expression of honoring that person if it's something really tragic. So maybe they don't want you to be sorry. It's a tricky one, but for sure, if you're comfortable with that, carry on. But I kind of, and we say it all the time. You could be in a supermarket and somebody's 3 feet away from you and you think you got a little close to me, say, I'm sorry. You know what I say to people when they say, I'm sorry? I say, did you do something wrong? I mean, just if it's somebody I know, we say, I'm sorry all the time. And it's kind of knee jerk. Anyway, carrying on, what we did was when we were in schools, and we still aren't going into schools, we were explaining how empathy guides us to reframe how we express ourselves and how we hear others. And we say it allows for deep listening. And we created these empathy circles with teachers. Can you imagine what they were going through? And you can create empathy circles within your communities. But a couple comments from the teachers. One said, I love my group and I'm feeling very validated and connected. I can't wait to try it with staff and then use it with students. Another said, it's truly empowering and transformative just to vent and be heard without judgment and unsolicited advice. Okay, so that was a few of the responses we got from teachers. Now, the source of where we learned about empathic listening originates in the work of Dr. Marshall Rosenberg's book, Nonviolent Communication. And here you can see it. You can order it. If you don't want to go through the big organizations, it's Puddle Dancer Press. And you can go on their website and order it directly from them. So we prefer to do all our buying from small stores and small organizations. And that's why we recommend going right to them. So, so the needs and feelings and empathy are all interrelated. Next Tuesday, we're going to have a presentation on what's called nonviolent communication based on this book, where we'll talk more about feelings, which I mentioned earlier, and needs, and how needs and feelings and empathy are all interrelated. And we highly recommend this book. Okay, so now we're going to discuss a bit of what happens in our brains when we practice empathy. So we're going to have a brief introduction to the neuroscience. Here is the hippocampus. The hippocampus is responsible for long and short-term memory. You see it in the diagram. It's the area of the brain where we find the area of the brain where we find the hippocampus is a part of the brain known as the limbic system. The limbic system communicates emotional responses to the brainstem and down the spinal cord, and our whole bodies respond. Empathic listening, in a way, acts as a stress reduction tool. And in an atmosphere where there are good vibes, the hippocampus remains in optimal working order. So memory development is enhanced on a hormonal level. Hormones that affect memory are activated by safety, stability, and security. In other words, same good vibes. So let's look at these things called hormones. Hormones are chemicals in the body that respond to environmental factors. They originate in different glands in different parts of the brain. They circulate throughout the whole body. Hormones attach to receptors on our cells that affect our mood, bodily functions, and it all depends on our environment. Different parts of the body produce different hormones. Adrenals produce adrenaline. Parts of the brain produce dopamine, serotonin, and oxytocin. These hormones have a positive effect on our mood. I got to tell you, when someone says, I hear you, it releases the dopamine and the serotonin. So most of us know where some other hormones such as testosterone and estrogen are produced. And we'll actually go into detail about the hormones of love and attraction on the 11th of February when we're going to present the neuroscience of love. The presence of empathy can produce elevated hormones that result in a sense of harmony and peace of mind. So hormones affect mood based on the environment and circumstances. There's also something called epigenetics, which, like hormones, is also based on one's environment and circumstances. And being empathic actually creates an environment. So epigenetics, it's a relatively new field of study, but first let's talk about the genetics part of epigenetics. Genetics is the study of genes. Everybody has them. Genes are inherited traits such as height, weight, eye color, shape of your chin, really everything. And then there's something called gene expression. What is gene expression? Gene expression is the specifics, such as green eyes, 5'8", any physical features, thick hair, no hair. For me, there were genes that said, time to cool it on the hair, also known as male pattern baldness. So baldness was an expression of the genes that determined hair growth. Are you with me? This is the sort of the simple science. Epigenetics is how the environment shapes and alters the expression of certain genes. So the effect of past environmental conditions can also be inherited. We won't go into that tonight. Let's look at two people who have the same gene for a disorder, but only one gets them and the other one doesn't. Epigenetics suggests that the environment could be a factor. So the study of genes allows us to see what genes we might have for certain health issues, but it doesn't mean the gene will express itself. And gene expressions and health are the result of how genes and the environment interact. Empathy is a dynamic epigenetic process. Empathy creates an environment of ease and harmony. Now we're going to shift to neurons and go a little deeper into the brain itself. Neurons are the cells that make up the parts of the brain. We have 86 billion neurons in our brain, in case you've been counting. Okay, neurons. Here we go. Here you can see. Neurons are brain cells that transmit electrical signals to each other. Neurons are constantly firing and wiring. So if you had an insight from the empathic listening exercise, before or after, your neurons fired in new patterns. Just like mine fired when the cab driver said 10 a day, that's what I get for New York. Right then and there, my neurons were firing and wiring into new neural pathways. Now, next, we look at the synapse. A synapse is the gap between two neurons. Here is where the electrical signals travel from one to the other. This is known as firing. As we exercise our brain by learning new things and practicing the skills that we learn, we form synaptic connections. This is known as wiring. Here is neurons firing and wiring. This is what it looks like in action. And finally, we're going to talk about neuroplasticity. Wiring is something that is an element of neuroplasticity. And this is our brain's ability to change and grow new neural pathways. This diagram shows a brain on the right side was in an environment of deprivation. On the left is a brain where the neural pathways developed normally. And in 2 weeks, we're going to give another webinar about the Adverse Childhood Experiences Study and the trauma responsive movement in schools, because a lot of kids, when they live in adverse conditions, neglect, abuse, family turmoil, it affects their brain structure. And there's a way that brains can regenerate. And there's a film called Paper Tigers. I would tell everybody before you come to the webinar on the ACEs and the trauma-informed work. Try to watch this film. I think it's on Amazon. It's called Paper Tigers, and it's about a school that became aware of brain science and how trauma affected their kids, and they switched from the punishment model to care, kindness, and understanding. And there's a level of care that you experience when someone says, "I hear you." One more piece about brain science and neuroplasticity is pruning. As we practice empathic listening, neurons are firing and wiring, creating new synaptic connections, right? Pruning is the process of removing neurons and synaptic connections that aren't needed anymore. So if this is your chance, this is your time to let go of empathy blocking, then you've pruned some synaptic connections. So I hope you experienced empathy as being interested rather than interesting. And here's how your brain looked when you were doing empathy, which would be, there it is. Look how your brain enjoyed doing that exercise. So did everybody prune their neural pathways a little bit? So now maybe empathy blocking is maybe a memory of the past. And empathic listening puts you really in control of your life. And with that empathic listening, your brain can look like that. Did empathic listening contribute to your hormones of fun, connection, discovery? The more empathic we are, the more we will fill our suitcase full of oxytocin, dopamine, and serotonin. Think about how you felt when you helped someone, when you did community service, when you gave directions to someone. How do you feel when you donate to a nonprofit like ours? Well, we will be most grateful if you would like to donate to our program. We are a nonprofit, and we're always very grateful if people can share their appreciation with us. We work on a very small level, and almost everybody is volunteering. So thanks everyone for staying with us. Come back next week for the NVC presentation. And in closing, empathic listening is not just social intelligence or emotional intelligence, it's loving intelligence. Okay, thanks. And Cicely's got some more information for everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, everybody. We hope everyone enjoyed that as much as we do. Just real quick, there was a few people that asked about what some of our upcoming webinars are and when. We usually hold them at 7 Eastern. Any night usually that we have them, it's usually at 7 o'clock. You can find them all on Eventbrite, same place you found this one. And then some of the other ones that don't have dates, those are others that we just have in the works right now. So stay tuned. Since you joined on for a webinar, we'll have you on our newsletter list, so you'll get an email letting you know when there's new ones coming out. And then on the next slide, we have just a little bit of information just about for those especially who might work in groups or organizations where you say, boy, my colleagues need this. We have we can bring workshops into organizations, businesses, great or small. And then we also have our individual sign up sort of training. We have those 2 groups I was talking about earlier, one in February, one in March. Anybody who's interested in just learning about this and a little more, you're welcome. We'd love to have you in for those. There'll be a lot of time for discussion, lots of practice kind of sessions like we did here tonight. So if you enjoyed this, you'll really love those. And so that is what we offer for just individual people. And then, like we said, for workshops, for groups, we also have our curriculum that people in schools, administrators, counselors, teachers, like we're talking about that SEL curriculum idea. That's what we have. And we also then have a guidebook. It's very similar to the curriculum, but obviously made for adults, for adult use. So that's something that we do have available for anyone. And then again, our website is on the next slide. The short version is trf.net, but it's the relationshipfoundation.org. It's our full website. You can find our book on there. I know there's a couple people said they were having trouble downloading the book. It seems like we've been having technical issues off and on. So if you have any trouble downloading the book, you can send us an email to our emails on the next slide, info@trf.net. Yeah, there we go, info@trf.net if you have any trouble. And again, let me see if I can find the survey link again, just so if anybody does want information or you want to request anything. I saw a few people asking about if you could get the little blank certificate that we have. Sure. If you want, let me find the survey, and then anybody can, if you want to make a note in there, then if I miss your email in the chat, then I have it and I can send that to anybody that needs it. So I just put the survey in there so anybody can give us feedback. And yeah, and like I said, if you're interested in bringing a workshop to your organization, a school, a parent group, PTA group, we work with just about everybody. So I think that's pretty much it. So we can open up to some questions if we want.
Or comments.
Yeah, and comments.